Welcome back to the Lotus Fields, my precious little blueberries. The pressing subject of discussion today is my history of commander decks and a shocking conclusion I've come to that I still find a little bit difficult to swallow. Like a lot of ideas on this channel, this one came to me while lying in a bed. And I gotta say it, that's not the first time something's came to me while lying in a bed. Heyo! I was trying to remember all of the commander decks I've ever made. 1, not possible. 2, great way to fall asleep. I figured the best way to do this would be going first deck to current deck and fill in the gaps later. The first one to pop into my head was obviously Teneb. That was my first deck. He's my dude, mainly in part due to nostalgia. Well, by the time this video ends, honestly, probably all due to nostalgia. Am I even a reanimator player? This dude is still fun and definitely my favorite commander, hands down. I still have him. It's awesome. After that, I thought my next deck was Safi Eric's daughter, where I just chained her along with sack outlets to get ETBs over and over again, but I forgot that I actually built Rune of the Hidden Realm before Safi, where I would just use untapped tappers to like use Rune multiple times, get a ton of triggers off. Keep this detail in mind, by the way. Then it was Safi after Rune. Then I built Zergo Helm Smasher. Don't even want to talk about it. Immediately hated it, dismantled it. It was no fun. I played like I think 1 or 2 games of that, but I did remember that one for some reason. I considered building Experiment Crag around this time, but I think I decided on Momir Vig. I'm not exactly sure of the timeline, but I know Momir Vig was a deck that I really liked, where I could chain a bunch of Simic colored creatures together using his tutor effect and then reveal to draw effect and then just like, you know, keep tutoring up more Simic creatures and keep doing it over and over, normally resulting in like a 15-minute turn. So Momir got taken apart. And honestly, I can't remember a lot of the decks in this time because I was playing less and less and building less. The next deck I remember being a bigger one for me was Sidisi Brood Tyrant, which tried to combine aspects of Teneb and then Momir Vig together to be like a toolbox reanimator deck, which I really liked, but Teneb just ended up being that deck, but you know, more fun and had nostalgia value, so, you know, here he stays. After that, I distinctly remember going through a period of time playing Teneb into my buddy's Damia deck and really being sick of having these skimpy little hand sizes, so I built Prime Speaker Zagana, which was just about, you know, value. It was just a value palace. Tons of card draw, tons of mana ramp, tons of huge creatures, very fun time. I tried 8.5 Tails for a mono white deck. There really wasn't a strat, it was just mono white. I threw all my favorite mono white cards in it. It got taken apart. It wasn't very good. More importantly, it wasn't very fun. Krufix the God was in the mix around this time, but that was just kind of another Prime Speaker deck, so I decided to take it apart. And then around this time, I took another break from the game from a couple years and didn't build decks for a couple years. This was around like War of the Spark, so I missed like War of the Spark era Magic for a little bit. Coming back to the game, I built Sisay Weatherlight Captain, 5 colors, so I could get to play with all the legendaries I had like missed out on over that last 2 years, which was really fun. It actually got the job done, but the deck ended up being taken apart because I liked some of the commanders in there a lot, but she's still one of my favorite decks to this day. I think there's a lot of value to just getting to play with all these new legendaries, getting to see how they work. It was really fun. I liked that. I also built my Nevinral and Toxrill control decks around this time. Yeah, I was on my piece of shit arc, which was just play Nev, play Draft, play Death Defies, sack Nev, whiteboard, get zombies, repeat. I loved it, but as you can tell, the playgroup probably wasn't the biggest fan of a control board wipe deck, so I got rid of it. Really needing a new commander that sparked my interest looking through recent spoilers, I came across Alando, where people were saying, you know, this guy's okay, and I was determined to make him not okay, to make him a monster, and I did. This deck needed to be taken apart, especially before we started recording gameplay on the channel, because it would have been rough to watch, trust me. The deck is about tapping Alando to draw a card, remove the card, put times counters on it, remove all times counters from all the cards you've done this to, put anything into play that has 0 on it now, pair this with tons of tap-on-tap engines, intruder alarms, and I think the longest turn I took in this deck was like 15-20 minutes, and trust me, I understand how gross I am for saying that, like I'm proud of it, but I am. Alando eventually got taken apart for my Kazura and Akimo deck, which was just tokens and aristocrats. Pretty fun, but not really my playstyle. It eventually got swapped out for Brakos, which was more my playstyle, but felt like another Teneb deck, so he got scrapped for a Layla, which was an artifact and enchantment deck that I played a lot. I really liked Layla a ton. She won games. She was consistent. The color combo was cool, but something just wasn't there, and we'll figure out what that something was by the end of this. So she got taken apart, adding most of her cards into my Teneb list. After Layla, we turned to Old Reliable, Rashmi, and Ragavan. They're one of my favorite decks right now. Might be my favorite deck right now. Just stealing everyone's stuff. Every game's different. Using everyone's stuff. Using all your treasures to play triggers and even more things. She's so goddamn fun. And she is definitely locked in besides Teneb as a pillar deck for me, for sure. Now, this gets interesting. Over the past couple months, I've built Rakdos, absolutely not a me thing. I've built Saruman, which reads like it would be a me thing. It was boring, and I hated it. I've built Extus and held on to him for like a month straight and tried to just keep playtesting him and building him. And again, I was like, this just feels like a worse Teneb. I'm sorry. I'm just going to have to go back to Teneb. So he's out of here. But last week, I found a commander and built a deck that I'm absolutely in love with. I've only had it for a week. I've played it about 12 times. We've won, I think, probably half of them, maybe 50, 60% of them. So I'm fine with that. And you might roll your eyes, but the Prime Speaker's making a return, but with a new name. Prime Speaker Vanifar is some of the most fun deck building and gameplay I've played in a while. She's just a toolbox deck that runs plenty of untappers to chain ETBs and death triggers to dig for tools. Almost every game I've played so far, I lay it out on the table afterwards, lay out my pod chains, like my 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, to see what I can chain together, and come up with new ones, new ways to tweak it, new ways to play it. It's so fun to just keep messing with this deck. For example, I didn't run any 1-drop creatures on the first few games, but then it hit me that when my Thragtusk come into play and die, that I'll be getting tokens, and there's plenty of other stuff in the deck that makes tokens. So if I run 1-drops, I can sack the tokens to Vanifar to search for them, and then start new chains. Really fun. But it also led me to a concerning realization. On the screen are all the decks I mentioned in this video. And like I said, I'm sure I missed a ton, but that only proves my point more. So, out of all these decks, the decks on the top are the ones I currently run and will run for the foreseeable future. The decks in the middle are the ones I can honestly say I enjoyed, ran well, and I would consider building again. While the ones at the bottom are the decks that I'm not interested in building at all. Looking at it laid out like this leads to some pretty interesting conclusions. Looking at the decks I wouldn't play again, 5 of them contain the color white, 5 of them contain the color blue, 8 of them contain the color black. That's not what I expected. 5 contain the color red, and a whopping 2 contain the color green. We'll keep this in mind. Moving up to the decks I would build again, 3 of them contain white, 8 of them contain blue, 3 of them contain black, 0 of them contain red, and 8 of them contain green. Now, if we take these numbers from decks we would build and subtract them from the decks we wouldn't build again, we get a super interesting result and a rough estimate of the colors I enjoy and don't enjoy playing. So for white, we have 3 minus 5, giving it -2. For blue, we have 8 minus 5, giving it 3. For black, we have 3 minus 8, giving it -5. For red, we have 0 minus 5, giving it -5. And for green, we have 8 minus 2, giving it 6. Having these new numbers, these are the scores, quote unquote, or a rough estimate of my favorite colors to play. This is genuinely kind of shocking, because if you asked me before I did this, what color player am I? I'd be like, I'm an Abzan player. I like the colors Abzan. I think that's just nostalgia talking. Now that I'm looking at this, guys, I'm a Simic player. And it honestly gets worse. Out of the 9 decks I would build, 7 of them contain Simic, while 2 of the ones I currently have contain Simic. And that led me to start seeing why Teneb is so important to me. He's the only thing that has been able to break me free of my ethereal Simic chains. And remember, I said it gets worse. Out of all these decks I would build, 7 of them were built around taking the longest, most intricate turns I could. And that's what my Rashmi and Prime Speaker decks do as well. I'm the asshole. Honestly, I like playing long-ass turns. I like building Rube Goldberg machine decks, and that's not to say they can't win. My Ghalta and the Endraze Forerunners, they can definitely win, but it takes a while to get there, especially with an intruder alarm. Anyways, going back to the ranking of colors, this is actually incredibly useful to have. It's easy to see this and be like, this boy doesn't like Mardu, but that doesn't necessarily mean that. What this list and color rank tells me is that I really enjoy running 3-color decks with Simic in those 3 colors, or at least prefer Mardu as a support color. Rune is Simic with white support, Sidisi is Simic with black support, Rashmi is Simic with red support. This actually helps me so much, as truthfully, I don't enjoy Mardu decks. I never have, and I've always just kind of lumped black in as a color I enjoy because I enjoy Teneb. I might really not like it that much as a main color. I just like it using it as like a support to Simic, honestly. And seeing it statistically proven that I don't like Mardu and that these are the colors you enjoy playing actually kind of helps me with deck building. But seeing that I'm a filthy long-turn Simic player is a tough pill to swallow. But swallow we must. Huge shout out to our patrons that you can now see on the screen. If you want to become one of these patrons, it starts as low as $1 and it helps out the channel a ton. Helps me get out more high quality content to you guys. So if you would consider that, that'd be amazing.